بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. My brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Oh, that's a nice, soft, very enthusiastic salam. Can I hear another one? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, when we say salams to each other, it is a dua, right? So inshallah that dua is accepted. For those that don't know me, my name is Firdaus. I was with SUMSA from 2008 to 2010, 3 years. It's good to see familiar faces. It's been a while since I've been around this building. And it's good to see unfamiliar faces as well. And mashallah, as always, it seems as though the sisters always kill it in terms of punctuality and attendance. So, yeah, so my talk today, inshallah, well, before I get into it, I should say that, inshallah, this gathering, like all the talks that SUMSA has been organizing, are a source of success for all of us. The fact that I'm sure, Mondays are usually the busiest day of the week for most uni students, and I think this time of the semester is one of the busiest times of the semester as well. So, your presence here is testimony to the relevance that we as young Muslims living in Australia find in our Islam. You get an SMS from Ziyad telling you to come to this talk, or you get an SMS from Moe or Ruqayya or Khadija saying, "Oh, let's go hang out at SciTech or get a mixed kebab at Uni Brothers." But we're here, right? We're here. And the Prophet ﷺ, he summed up the struggle that the Muslims face in this world and that of the disbelievers when he said, "Ad-dunya sijnul mu'min wa jannatul kafir." Right? This dunya, this world, is a sijn, a prison for the mu'min, the believer. Right? And it's a jannah, a paradise for the disbelievers. So what do you guys think this means? It's probably pretty obvious, but I'm trying to get a bit of audience engagement here. Anyone? Tough crowd. Alright, so it means that the life of the Muslim in this world is restricted in what we can or can't do by virtue of us following the commands of Allah. And for the disbeliever, this world is a paradise for which they are free to transgress. But the most important lesson that we should take from this hadith is that despite all the wealth, all the luxury, all the false, false pleasures of this world, that this dunya will always be a sijn, a prison, compared to what is promised for the mu'min in the akhirah. So anyway, moving on to the topic at hand, the topic that I was given for this week, or actually for last week, and probably should thank the brothers and sisters for allowing me to come back and do the talk today because I was unable last week. So the topic for today is the obligation of the Dawah carrier, right? The obligation of the da'i. Right, mashallah, that's a pretty epic topic right there. Dawah, right? To invite. And it's really the purpose and drive for countless Muslim individuals, groups, organizations. Right, SUMSA, although the purpose of SUMSA is to provide services to Muslims on campus, if you want to describe SUMSA in a very narrow way, essentially the role of SUMSA is to propagate the ideals and concepts of Islam to the masses. So thinking about this topic while I was trying to prepare for it, I couldn't help but let my thoughts wander into a toolbox. Not literally a toolbox, but the idea of a toolbox. So within a toolbox, gathered that you have no missing tools, and perhaps anyone doing engineering or a science degree can help me here. you have certain objects and equipment in there that all have a purpose in fixing something or building something or doing something, right? And so the tools have a purpose and a role to play in this greater cause, right? And so the screwdriver, it screws and puts the screw in place. The hammer, it hammers. The measuring tape, it measures, right? So you have all these tools. And so each tool has its role in fulfilling the overall purpose of tools to build whatever it is that needs to be built. So comparing this analogy to our current situation, what do you guys think is a toolbox? Yeah. Yes? Yeah. Well, I guess it depends on how you interpret it, but from my interpretation, it's the ummah, right? The toolbox is the ummah. And our purpose, right, so us, our purpose is to what? To seek the pleasure of Allah and to implement His deen. So here's a very simple but profound and deep question for all of us here. He asked the question, what tool are you? Right, what tool are you? And it might seem a bit cliche, but when you think about it, what tools are we in this greater cause? What abilities do you possess to engage in the propagation of Islam, to engage in the invitation of Islam? What specialities do you carry? Now you're thinking, what do I have to be a tool for? I'm happy to go pray Jummah. I'm happy to fast during Ramadan. I'm even happy to take a day off to go pray Eid. And now you want me to be a tool? Aren't you happy enough, Firdaus, that I came to your talk? So, now one thing I want to make clear is that the obligation of being a Dawah carrier doesn't necessarily equate to the obligation of being an inspirational or eloquent speaker. Nor does it equate to the obligation of having to spout verses and hadith just like that. Because the simple fact is that not everyone can do that, right? Although if you have the ability to do so, then you must, right? Then you must. So one thing to keep in mind always, when we look at our own ability to become du'at, to become dawah carriers, is a hadith related by Al-Bukhari from Abdullah ibn Amr, where the Prophet ﷺ said that convey from me even one verse. Convey from me even one verse. So you may not be the best speaker, you may not have the, charisma or whatever they call it to go speak in front of a lot of people. But if you know, even if you know a verse, then that is enough for you to convey it. So my brothers and sisters in Islam, when we study our Islam and understand the nature and obligations set upon us by virtue of us following our Islam, we discover that it is a deen of proactiveness and action. After receiving the first message from Jibril, the ambassador of inspiration, on that fateful day, where our beloved Prophet ﷺ was commanded to Iqra, he hastened back to his home and to the comforts of his first wife, Khadija. May Allah be pleased with her and bless her. And he said, cover me, cover me, right, cover me, cover me, out of the sheer shock of the event that just took place. And he knew that this message that he received was no small thing. And it was not long afterwards that Allah again revealed the verse, this time commanding, Ya ayyuhal mudaththir, kum fa'andir. Ya ayyuhal mudaththir, kum fa'andir. Oh, you wrapped in garments, arise and warn. Oh, you wrapped in garments, arise and warn. And he continues, and your Lord magnify, and your garments purify, and keep away from the idols, and give not a thing in order to have more, and be patient for the sake of your Lord. So these verses begin with the exalted core in the resounding voice, commissioning the Prophet ﷺ with the mighty command, taking him from his sleep, from his comfort, to struggle and continue under hardship. Ya ayyuhal mudaththir, kum fa'andir. Oh, you wrapped in garments, arise and warn. So this, my brothers and sisters, was the first command to be sent after receiving the wahyu in Cave Hira. And so by understanding this verse, our perception of Islam becomes one of active duty, a call of duty, if you will, the real call of duty. Right? From the get-go, Islam is not a deen of just, sitting on the fence, right? But it is a deen of activeness, of proactiveness. And it is one for us to arise and inshallah become the sharpest tools in the toolbox. And Allah, He commands this exact thing when He says in the Quran, more or less, let there arise out of you a group of people inviting all that is good and enjoining in the al-ma'ruf, and forbidding the munkar. Right? And it's this enjoyment in the ma'ruf, in the good. Right? And by good we mean everything that Islam orders, and the forbidding of the munkar that shapes our da'wah. And so, in addition, we also hear this line, we've probably read it, or we've heard it, but we definitely know about it, right? That Islam is a complete way of life, right? Thank you. So we've all heard about it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that, "O you who believe, enter completely, enter perfectly in Islam and follow not the footsteps of shaitan. Verily, he is a plain enemy to you." And so we know Islam has solutions to everything. Right? We know that Islam provides guidance from the way we govern ourselves, to our families, to our communities, to our governments, to our nations. And so when we invite people to Islam, we let people know about this. We must. Every aspect, as much as possible. And so, Islamic Awareness Week, at least, we all know Islamic Awareness Week happens annually, and it happens across campuses, not only in Australia, but all over the world. But during this time, SUMSA opens its doors to engaging with the wider community. And the top questions that you get have to do with Aqidah, right? The dress code, something to do with the clash of civilizations, whether here in the West, or the occupations or conflicts happening in the Muslim world, or the uprisings happening in the Muslim world, and of course, the all-important question of having 4 wives. Always comes up, right? I mean, we don't get a chance to choose what questions are asked to us. It's just sort of questions that are asked. And so the da'i must have the ability to answer these questions, right? But not just answer them in a defensive manner, right? But to be assertive as well. Of course, in the best manner and with wisdom. Now, having said that, if you do not know the answer to a particular question, then it is in our religion to say, the best thing to say is, I don't know. All right, best for you to say I don't know, then open your mouth, say something that isn't true, and that's actually, you're accountable for that. So, but at the same time, you can't dwell on that I don't know statement. Right? It is not fitting for a mu'min, for a believer, to dwell in ignorance. And as I was talking about before the talk started, you had that lecture 2 weeks ago on the obligation of seeking knowledge, which I'm sure the brother went through extensively about the obligation of seeking knowledge. So the knowledge coupled with the obligation of dawah is a very powerful thing. Very powerful thing. And so when we are approached about issues on, why Muslim women, or why some Muslim women wear the niqab, for example, we shouldn't get into this, defensive mode and say, oh, it's purely a cultural thing. It's purely a cultural thing. No, the niqab does have a basis in Islam. Differences of opinions do exist, but the basis is there in Islam. Right? And I'm sure, like when we were kids in primary school, and we were asked, hey, how come you don't eat pork? And you'd be like, oh, because it's a dirty animal. Have you seen a pig rolling around its own filth? Like, that isn't the reason why we don't eat pork. We don't eat pork because Allah said so, right? So we can't try and find some sort of cost-benefit analysis with the deen. Right? It doesn't work that way. Going for time, 1:30. And so, as I was saying, when we have to be assertive, so we answer the questions and we give explanations, but at the same time, question the status quo as well. Question the position of and the status of women in this society, in today's society. Right? Because that is exactly what Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the Sahaba, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon them all, did. When they were in Makkah, they questioned the status quo and they didn't just submit to it. So another thing to note is a question that arises when discussing da'wah to non-Muslims sometimes, and it's how can we make Islam more appealing to the non-Muslims? Or how can we make Islam more appealing to the non-Muslims? And a few weeks ago, there was an ustad from Indonesia, like big time ustad. I don't know if you have any Indonesian, Malaysian brothers or Indonesian? Malaysia, okay, no worries. Anyway, so you had this Indonesian ustad coming from Indonesia to Sydney, and he was giving a talk to the youth, and his English, mashallah, was very good. So, and he brought a lot of youth to the lecture. But anyway, one of the questions at the end came up asking, how can we make Islam more appealing to non-Muslims? And mashallah, he answered the question quite well. And he said, Islam is in no need of redecorating, right? It doesn't require us to attach flowers on it. Because when you are implementing it and calling a spade, then the beautiful scent of Islam will permeate and the bees will come. Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings be upon him, the best of example to mankind, not just the Muslim but to mankind, was known as what? What was his nickname given to him before the message came? Or even after the message came, the first message. What was the name that he was known by? Al-Amin, right? The what? The trustworthy. This was a name that everyone in Mecca gave him. He was a trustworthy. Men would give their prized, most valuable possessions to him when they would need to travel or do something, because they could trust no one else like they could trust Muhammad. And so he was, he had the best of manners and in speech. before the message came and after the message came. And so if anyone could make Islam appealing, it would be him, right? And yet we know he faced staunch opposition, right? People that he once relied upon chucked the 180 on him, right? A smear campaign was launched against him and the Sahaba and Islam. And so Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, was hated by some, not because of his akhlaq, but because of his aqidah, right? Not because of his manners, but because of his core beliefs, what made up Islam. However, at no point whatsoever did he change his aqidah in order to appease the tribal leaders. Right? And we know of that famous account that took place in Mecca in the early days of Islam, when Islam was just starting to pick up pace. We know of his uncle Abu Talib approaching him, right, and saying how the tribal leaders of the Quraysh will offer you wealth, will offer you position, will offer you whatever you want in exchange for you to quiet down, for you to decrease your efforts, for you to keep to yourself. This is the offer that Abu Talib came with, came to with his nephew, and he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his response was what? His response was, "Oh my uncle, by Allah, if they put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left, in return for my giving up of this cause, I would not give it up until Allah makes the truth victorious, or I die in His service to Him." And so, hearing these words from his nephew, Abu Talib, he was deeply, deeply moved. He didn't have the heart now to ask anything from him. He didn't have the heart to get in his nephew's way. And so he told him that I would not get in your way, and I would continue to protect you. Mind you, we know Abu Talib, did he die with the kalima on his lips? Did he die testifying to Allah? On his deathbed, what was Prophet Muhammad trying to do? Trying to get him to say the kalima. But he was stubborn and proud to stay on the path of his forefathers. And so he died as a non-Muslim. And we know the minimum punishment that is there in the hellfire, and that is your feet will be on hot coal, and it will be so hot that just by standing there, your brain boils. And that is the punishment that Abu Talib, the lightest punishment that he will receive. And so, you know, in the face of adversity, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not whatsoever, he did not compromise his deen. So this is something to keep in mind, my brothers and sisters. Anyway, it's about 1:37, so I'll leave it there, inshallah. I pray that Allah grants us, I guess, the courage to speak out when we are required, as Musa alayhi salam spoke out to Pharaoh. And I pray that Allah continues to bestow on us guidance of that which Prophet Muhammad ﷺ left behind. So I'll leave it now for any question and answers. For any mistakes that I made, it's purely from myself. Anything, all right? So I'll open the floor up now for any questions.